Welcome at Classix in Focus, this conversation with Andreas Sønning. As this the third day of Classix festival in Yash. Today we will talk about value chains, culture, authorities and business with Andreas Sønning. I will tell you some details about Andreas. Ever since 1987, Andreas Sønning is associate professor at the Norwegian Academy of Music and visiting professor to several universities in Norway and United Kingdom. Since 2000, he has been part of building and running several EU-founded networks for renewing higher music education and implementing innovation and entrepreneurial projects on a transversal basis. Sønning also toured as a flute soloist and chamber musician. Through his own company, SMP, is correct? He has been in charge of developing cultural programs for major international institutions, Norwegian authorities and multinational companies like Telenor, Nordea and Total E&P Norway and Hydro. With a concept called the integrated model, he has, with his long-term private sector partner Telenor, received several prizes as European Award for Partnership in Arts and Businesses, Brussels 2004, and Award for Equal Partnership Arts and Business, Oslo 2009. Andreas Sønning, welcome to Yash and welcome to Classix Festival.
Thank you, it's an honor.
I'd like to ask you and to develop for us, what is this integrated model?
The integrated model is a concept which says that we in the arts shall be a part of value chains. Value chains is a concept where something is created, and then the creation has to be produced, to be disseminated, and then been through trade and sales projects, and then to end user. So an integrated model says that we, through these value chains, build value workshops with the tools we have from creating atmospheres and experiences of performing arts, which can be music but also other artistic expressions. We can be part of a bigger picture where authorities can use culture for cultural exchange, to share values through what we can do with mutual respect and understanding across cultural boundaries. And of course this integrated model is a mindset that we're not just doing music because we like to play, because music has a value in its own right, which it has, but we can also be instrumental in conveying messages and be part of showing in practical life on stage how we can show intercultural respect and cooperation on stage with people from different parts of the world. And the integrated model also is applied when I worked with multinational companies, and they often say we sponsor culture, or we sponsor human project, or we support. But in an integrated model, the concept is that it's a mutual thing. So when I worked with Telenor Company for 26 years, I've never had the impression that they support me or the culture, but we actually support them as a tool for reaching out to different people in different countries. So when I worked with all these different countries, I have felt that I've been integrated in a supplementary competence team where the musical skills, the dramaturgical skills to make stage performances and and meetings with extremely different people from different backgrounds, socially, ethnically, culturally. We can actually communicate on an equal basis. And then we integrate culture in their strategy for value-based communication, for showing the values from a company. And to mention that the integrated model was actually built out with Telenor, because they had a value set to combine people across, with technology, with mobile technology, across geographical borders. And when I was asked to work with them already in 1993, 94, then they said, okay, but they asked me to be sponsored. And I said, no, I think we should rather do something together. And then I asked them about their value set. And then I said, well, we want to make things possible for communication. And I said, well, but why? What is the vision? And the vision was to connect people. And with the respectful communication and cooperation, we actually showed that in a very practical way. In Russia, Ukraine, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, all the Balkan countries we were, Ireland, you know, Myanmar. So I've been sitting on the ground, playing drums with Africans and play the flute under chandeliers in Moscow. So that's the integrated, big, yeah.
All right. This is a talk about the value chains, culture, authorities, and businesses. Do you think the culture is the medium and the ground where authorities and business can interconnect? Also with culture, but through culture?
Yes. You're now talking to a person that has worked with this for 26 years. And I don't believe that the partners that I've had has done that to support me or the culture. They've done it before because they have seen the effect of the experience that we make. The point is that we don't necessarily say we are Norwegians, we go out and show the Norwegian culture. But the fact is to show how we can cooperate, you know, to find some ways to build cultural links. You know, we have done a lot with France, and there is a lot of interesting historical links. Now, in 2019, we celebrated 100 years with the Chamber of Commerce with Norway and France. And we made that celebration September 19th last year, and that will be follow-ups. And then culture is kind of highlighting the history between our countries, which is about culture, but also the values that we share with the other country, you know, with democracy, freedom of speech, all these common values that we have. Yeah.
Andreas, with your extraordinary experience, what would you say the music is and the communication through music and different roles of creative musicians?
Well, that's three questions, and we can combine these three very logically, because as a professor I would say that like a lexicon, if you know, turn up and click on a lexicon, you say that music is intentionally structured sounds which could be in contrast from industry or traffic sounds or noise or perhaps sound from a waterfall. The intentional structure of sounds can communicate atmospheres, sadness, emotions, very strong emotions, empathy, grief, like when we had a terror attack in Norway, People were coming together. We had ceremonies where our feelings were communicated. So we had a very important communication task to do. That was a challenge to sort of bring out the feelings that we had in this very sad period in our history, which was uniting our country in grief. And at the same time, fighting for the values of openness and freedom and fighting against violence. And on the other hand, we can structure sounds with other performing arts, with text and dance and drama and projected sonography. And with all these performing arts, we can create joy, happiness, celebration, and of course provide values for diplomatic reasons, for music therapy. And also we can make a profile for companies that want to connect to culture, to build a profile, to build seriousness. So yes, we have a strong tool. And the third question was the roles for professional musicians, performing and creative musicians. And I can share with you, when I started studying music, I was qualified. I'm coming from a very small local coastal town in Norway. And my parents anticipate that I should do like my brother, studying law or economy or engineering, something proper, you know. So when I qualified to get into the academy, and that was a kind of victory for an 18-year-old boy from the southern part coming into the capital, you know, winning the audition, being part of that. And then I remember my conservative aunt from Oslo West, she said to my parents, "What shall become of this boy? What shall become of him? He can't just go around blowing into a silver column, you know." So the roles of musicians, we have to be creative. We have a challenge to be high qualified with high level artistically, and then to be seen we have to be outstanding in some ways, and to be seen and to do something we have to be creative, and we have to produce ourselves. We have to go into value chains because we can't go alone out in the world. And these value chains provides values, so we have to choose some values. And I made some choices regarding values. Peace to trade and trade through peace, like the World Trade Center. So I worked with them, doing projects for them, and listened to the leaders like from New York when the Twin Towers, very strong impression on me, that we have to work with values, and we can support that through cultural performances in a very strong way. So the roles for creative and performing musicians is to be able to take these challenges, to be creative and to be conscious of our actually communication power. People notice what we do. It has an emotional impact. People might forget what our leader says, what the mayor says, or the king, or the president, or whatever. But the emotion, the feeling that they had when something were right, with respectful communication and cooperation in the arts field, that is to be remembered. And the roles is to be willing and to really want to communicate something of value. And we have to have a strong nerve system to stand on the stage, to really want to do it, and also to be able to follow what's happening in the world. We can't be in a cultural bubble outside society. We have to follow. And the values that we want to do priority on, we have always have to follow what our purpose can be. And I would never believed that I could be a part of a bigger picture for diplomatic work, for multinational companies, when I started studying. It has been a fantastic period of more than 30 years. And the reason for that to happen is that I've been so blessed to go into value chains with people with supplementary competence teams that could see the value of using culture as a tool for value-based communication. And of course, in Pakistan, I've never been to Pakistan. I worked half a year to prepare, and I was able to find a group there with one Shia Muslim, one Sunni Muslim, and one Christian. And when we work together, we never ask about these things because we respect everyone across whatever background or things that background you come from. But there, it was a very, very important case that we had attitude of respect. So to have that group was called Fusion, and then I was not able to get any female performers at that time. This was in 2004. So I brought, of course, a girl band to Islamabad. And the merge between the cultures, I was able to find an old raga that had some of the same melody intervals as Norwegian folk music. And the merge was fantastic. And the feeling of togetherness and respect was fantastic. So the roles of professional musicians is to be creative, innovative, in the way we put a content together. We have to do theme building. We can do nothing alone. And we also have to keep our integrity. I've been asked to do things that I didn't want to do, and I've been able to say no. And I've been respected for that, though I could have earned a lot of money to go into pathways that was not part of what I thought I could do regarding my integrity. So was that the answer for your question?
Yes, thank you. Andreas, listening to you, it comes to me that I could present you as an expert in communication, in diplomacy, in the networking also. I think it wouldn't be a mistake, right?
Thank you. That's very nice words. I think yes, through my education and my experience working with both cultural institutions and authorities, not least, and businesses, has taught me to be able to listen. When I teach, I try to bring something in from the business world. And there's something called a business canvas or a value proposition canvas. And there, it's about being conscious about your own capacity, what you do, what your features are, and what your experience are. This is me, this is what I can contribute with. And then there is the partner. What does the partner do? What do they want? And what do they fear? And if you have a kind of humble attitude towards yourself, not as the big flutist standing in front of a symphony orchestra with your big paper, splashed up in the concert hall before you come in. And I've done that. I've done that. I'm so happy and proud of do that. I've been premiering a flute concerto on Munch, inspired by Munch paintings in Washington, and that's great. And that's what people like me do from the Academy of Music or academies. But even more important is that we can look at what we do and what we can achieve as a part of a bigger picture. So when I did this in Washington, I worked with a very, very clever and bright ambassador from Norway called Kåre Aas. And he said that what we have done to be part of the national stage in the Kennedy Center was a goal that they achieved true culture. And it was not just the cultural program about 150 years immigration to America and the melting pot in America of cultures where Norwegians have taken part. It was also using our 90-minute gala performance as a meeting point with interests from other sectors of society, from business and research and diplomatic purposes. So that was a state-run, a governmental ground that was kind of neutral ground for people to meet and discuss. And those, yes, we can, if we are willing and if we are humble enough to say that what we do is important, but it can also be part of something bigger. So actually the ambassador said to me afterwards, from one ambassador to the other, congratulations with this performance. And of course, that's extremely nice and inspiring to hear, you know, after so many years in the service of culture, you could say. Yes.
How much power can music produce as a message or statement to the world?
How much do you want me to
yeah,
to evaluate
it is possible
it?
a scale.
No, you can't measure that. But over the years, I mean, as I had an academic background already before I started my company in '94, I said, yes, I really want to work with you. And I was artistic director for the cultural program in Oslo when they had these Winter Olympic Games up in Lillehammer in Norway. Perhaps you heard about that, even in Romania, Winter Olympics. And then I got to know a lot of companies. And then I said, please, if we shall do a pilot for Telenor Cultural Program, you must do an evaluation. And you must say, is this worth the money? Is this conveying the values that you want to achieve?
It's a powerful message.
Yes, the powerful message about respectful communication and cooperation. So every arrangement, every concert, every cultural meeting place was evaluated. And that was very strong. We had church concerts where 98% wanted to be invited back. And now we've done 26 years of Christmas concerts. And the same with the Nordea Bank. Nordea Bank is the largest bank where they put digital tools, you know, to be digitalized as a bank. They didn't want to see their customers on an everyday basis, but they wanted to collect them, to have kind of informational lectures about financial instruments. And then they had a culture. And of course, they evaluated this. So to put the answer into someone else's voices, you see, they had independent companies that was actually evaluated what we did. So yes, I must say, and I try also to tell my students that, why do you play this? What do you want to express? What should be the effect on putting this piece or this program on the stage? And yes, we have experienced that. I have had some very strong, very strong experiences about that. We have talked about people coming with a normal career, coming to public concerts or invited from businesses and authorities, or me playing with cultural institutions. But there is also a point here. I've played for people with special needs. We've done classical concerts for people that you might not think that they were able to enjoy classical music, be able to to take it in. But over the years, like 30 years, with my students and also with myself and professional colleagues, we have done concerts for disabled people, from people with autism. And the first time I did that was in 1980. And that's 40 years ago. And I went in there. We had a lot of concerts around in the area of Norway. And I came into the institution, and there were 100 children of all ages, I would say. And they were not looking straight in your eyes. They were looking between your eyes and everywhere. And then I picked up my flute. I wandered around. I played Dance of the Blessed Spirit by Gluck. And suddenly I saw someone were crying, someone were smiling, someone were focusing. And I realized back then how strong impact actually the emotional language of music can be. So yes.
So much power then.
I think I have experienced that more than I would think when I studied. So yeah.
Andreas, we all have a clue when a cultural medium benefits from the implication of companies, of business medium. But what benefits are there for either or small or large company to support culture?
Again, you say support. And that's the common understanding that okay. Culture needs support. And I'm not criticizing the question, because of course there is a lot of benefit for doing support to cultural institutions, to artists, to special performances developing. And when they support that, then they can be profilized through that. And support is kind of this sponsoring model when the people with money get prestige from people that are supported with not so much money, but with a kind of artistic value, you know?
This is in our mind, yes.
So that's the normal way of thinking. And of course, all over the world, we see that for companies and authorities to be connected with artists and high-leveled stage performance, that can be strong. That could lift their profile in a very good way. But at the same time, I must say that my experience during the last 27 years is actually that we can support processes where communication is needed, with value-based communication, when people want to make a profile. And we started talking about value chains. And the point with value chains, the Professor Porter that has written and presented the industrial value chains is thinking in a very linear way of production, dissemination, to find the right people to sell some products and services. But with the cultural field, I think the term value workshops, I will come back to that. That implies a cooperation on how we can do this together. How can I, with my cultural competence, my competence in dramaturgical analysis and process, how can that help building values, building messages? That could be for foreign aid, could be for people in need, it could be for diplomatic purposes. We can actually be the one that is supporting. When I was 60 years old, the CEO and president for Telenor for 12 years, he made a greeting to me saying that I've been part of a team helping with cultural understanding and respect and communication. And that's the best greeting I could ever have. So it was not that they supported, but we can actually support.
Right, but an economist who is not interested in culture and music and could say that, well, you as a musician cannot live without economy, without people like me. Instead, I can live without music, so without people like you. Where is...
Then I would tell the economists, do and go your commercial stuff. Sell your tomatoes, or sell your cars, do it your way, and you have your profile. And then I do priority on working with people that see the power of the arts. And you know, I made a production in '97 at a 1700 ballroom at the Oslo Museum. It's in the Vigeland Park. If some of you ever come to Oslo, there's a huge sculpture park. And then there is an old manor house. And we had a small chamber orchestra. We had an actor from the National Theatre. We had 2 dancers. And there was this guest from a very commercial industry, I would say, very commercial industry. And he came afterwards to me and said, "Mr. Sønning, this was great. Can we work together?" And I said, "Well, who are you?" And he said, well, don't you know me? And he was on the list of the richest persons in Norway. I said, well, so I turned the question around, and he said, well, why? Give me a reason why you think I can do something for you. And then he talked a lot, and I listened to him, and I tried to be very polite. And then I said, as a joke, I said, okay, so you want me to put up, for example, 2 trucks, make a stage out in outside a shopping mall, and then we have some pink smoke, and then some ladies coming out with not so much clothes, and dancing out there, and we can have some timpanis. And he said, yes, that could be great. And I said, okay, but then we are not in the same wavelength, because this is not what I want to do. It's okay for people that want to have that image, but that's not my image. And then he sort of looked at me and he said, okay, so if business people have their own ways of communicating, let them have that. And I'm so privileged that I can choose people that see the value of serious and honest, creative stage performances. We have an obligation to try to support new art, new text, new poems, new music, new dramas, and having a high ambition. I can tell you that I have built up a festival in the southern part of Norway, where I come from. It was called Nordic Summer Nights, and it was great. It was growing, and we had 18 businesses, 9 municipalities, 2 counties, and 1 university behind us. And we had 1,250,000 NOK, like 120,000 euro, something like that, before selling 1 ticket. And it was growing very well. And after 9 years, there was some change in the association behind us. And someone says, okay, this has a very high prestige, but we are coming together, we have business-to-business meetings, people are mingling, there's a lot of industry leaders coming. And why do we have to have this high ambition on the artistic side? Why shall we have international artists? Why shall we? Is that necessary? And then there was this discussion. And when I had this reluctant attitude, I went an hour in the forest, and then I sent an email to everyone and say I quit. Because you can do extra work, you can stay up late nights, you can travel, you can do a lot of extra, but if someone is challenging your integrity, then you don't have to go on. Was that an answer?
Yeah, thank you very much. Through your activity, you are crossover genres, talking with all kind of artists and musicians. Well, how does classical music merge with folk, pop, or I don't know, jazz music?
How they merge, or how they can merge, or can they merge? What?
How they merge?
How they merge? A lot of classical music is inspired from folk music. And nowadays, more often, I find students that have the capacity to both being brilliant classical performers and jazz performers. But I must say, again with integrity, there are some very embarrassing examples of classical musicians trying to be popular artists, and then it's not working. So I was in a jury once, and I said that the artist must have the capacity or the knowledge to know where and when they can do things with high level. I mean, so this is one part. The other part of that question is when we have intercultural cooperations, it's much easier for me to put up on stage people from folk music from one country with folk music from another country, because they can find a mutual wavelength. And also jazz musicians, they are used to improvise. And well, there is exceptions, but a lot of classical musicians have never been working to develop their improvisational skills. So looking back, mostly jazz or folk musicians has been part of my intercultural productions, I must say. Yeah, it's a kind of issue. You mentioned a kind of issue there. And as artistic director, you have to cut through and say, yes, this can work, this cannot work. That you have to go into your authority and say that. Yes.
You answered and you talked about this thing that I want to ask you now, but let's put it in another angle or something. Is there a specific value set for a company that support or collaborate with culture, or should the art industry only be supported by a certain type of companies?
That's a very good question, actually, because it's cutting into the core of what we are talking about. I think that companies should be very careful with what kind of artists they should work with. They should do a lot of research. And we have examples that artists shouldn't deserve to be put up as representative artists for businesses or for their country. For different reasons. Perhaps they don't want to follow up the ethical standards that is required. So from that angle, it's very important to look at the value sets for the artists in general. And the other way around, as my story about this commercial businessman, you know, I had a gut feeling that he was not serious, that he was not interested in arts in itself. He was, had another kind of aesthetic value set than me. And I think also that if I should be connected to a company with not the same respect for the arts that I want and I should be affiliated with, that would be very bad for my profile, for my integrity as an artistic director. So I will not tell names and examples on that, but I've said no to significant money, I would say, because some questions and invitation I've got would not fit with the value sets that I want to fulfill. So yes, your question is really into the core of this conversation. We should both look at the value sets for the different stakeholders in the value chains.
Also musicians and
performing artists in general, they should not just look for the money, but look for and if you think about that in a very rough situation, you could be challenged to prostitute yourself because you can earn some money, and that would be a disaster for your profile. Why should this and this artist work with this and this product? And then every musician must evaluate what kind of values they want to do. So yeah.
Andreas, I think it's the time to invite people from the audience to address some questions, if there are. Please do. You have some questions? Anyone?
Do you think the integrated model can work in Eastern European countries as well as it does in Scandinavia?
The question is whether I think the integrated model for communication through culture can work in Eastern Europe, and it has worked in Central Europe and Northern Europe. The answer is, of course, yes. And it can work on a small scale, building a small festival. It could be something around a humanitarian project. It could be a small and medium-sized business. And the good thing about small and medium-sized businesses, they also have to find value chains to put themselves into a bigger supplementary competence team. And cultural programs could be in clusters, meaning that people in a special sector could work together. And we have seen that, for example, with the festival Nordic Summer Nights in the southern part of Norway, there's a lot of very small companies that had benefit of being into this association. So absolutely. And yes, I've been so fortunate to work with huge multinational companies, and that's been sustainable for like 27 years for some of them, and for like 18 years or 16 years already. But the model, when we have this workshop and we see what is your values, what is your goals, how can we use cultural tools to help you to provide your vision for your products and services? Of course. And the thing is that the smaller the company is, the more you have to do yourself for practicalities. So when I work with huge companies, they do everything. I mean, they do the tickets and they book the stages and the sound and lights and, you know. But when you work with smaller companies, you have to have a kind of supply chain around you. You have to bring your supply chain, you could say. Yeah.
And the last question, for you, since you combine the performing career and the entrepreneurial career.
Yep.
Until now, after 26 years of working with the big corporations, and what was your biggest challenge?
You're asking about how to combine the artistic work with being an artistic director, also making sure that economic administrative tasks is solved. That's your question. And the integrated model has a wonderful concept because it allows the artistic director, in this case me, to do what I'm trained and where I have my expertise, and they can contribute with all the economic administrative sides. So for these companies, I've never, in this relation, I've never had to run after money because the finance situation has been their issues, and I could concentrate. You could say that for professional stage performers or performing artists, there are roughly two models. The one model is to go in and be part of the internal value chains in companies, and then they do all the what we call the dull and hard work. The other model is to establish yourself in a value chain with a production company. And that's what we do. We urge our students to make production companies. And I've also for 11 years been part of European Creative Futures, which is a interdisciplinary network with people from management and business and media and fine art and graphic design. And the point is to make all these wonderful young talents to see how they can build value chains together with production companies, and that they are stronger together. So for your question, for this gentleman down there, is that yes, it might be that to work as an artistic director, you have to build supply chains, a supplementary team around you, unless you will be weared out. That's an advice.
Thank you for your questions. Thank you, Andreas, for our conversation about value chains, culture, administratives, and businesses today here at Classix in Focus, Classix Festival. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
For me too.